Hello to you. My name is Maria Kądzielska and you are watching Poland Daily Culture. Today we'll take you for a journey to Britain. Here with me is Sergiusz Papliński, an editor of British Poles. Thank you very much for being with us.
A pleasure.
And I would like to talk with you about a very special person for Polonia in Britain, and his name is Sergiusz Papliński, veteran, a member of Polish army during the World War II, and later an artist, and I would say a soul of Poles living in London.
Absolutely. Sergiusz's story is remarkable. It's very few people, I think, that have or go through something that he had, and still actually going. Sergiusz is still with us, being 93 years old. And his story started when he was 14, 15 years old, when he joined the partisan unit. At that time, it was quite a challenge. You know, think about yourself or myself. What were we doing when we were of that age? I don't think we would take weapons, go to the woods, and live in the forest fighting for Poland.
And he was in the Union of Szary. I would say with a challenge, because they had a lot of very difficult tasks, which for a 15-year-old boy was a lot. So what he was doing there? Absolutely.
They didn't want to accept him at first. They said they will not accept the child into the ranks. But Sergiusz was very brave. He said, "What is the difference?" And he was speaking to this commander, his leader, Szary, and he asked him, "What is the difference between us? Because if we take pistols in our hands, we can check ourselves and we can do a little test." So he was very brave. He was in the mining unit. By that, I mean in the explosive group. So that was his specialization. And later on, he was in the execution groups. And that's quite insane. The stories that he told me and some other friends, which some of them are not even published, how they took the Volksdeutsch, those who were helping the Germans, and brought them to a forest and read out at the last punishment a court verdict, because the partisan units, they were not just chaotic anarchistic groups that would fight. Every mission that they had to undertake was given to them by a Polish court. So those Nazis that they killed, they often buried or left in those woods. And some of those stories are absolutely crazy.
And he was also taking over the wagons with pistols, with basically every military equipment which Germans were passing to Warsaw when the uprising started.
Yes, that was part of what they were doing. They were taking over the trains with the deliveries of weapons. He even told me once a story how there were Hungarians who were delivering those weapons, and usually they would kill the Nazis, but because they were Hungarians, and the Hungarians said, "Actually, we don't have anything against you, we're just doing what we're told," they let them go. And even those Hungarians wanted to join Szary's unit in the woods, but of course that was slightly illegal, but they took over the weapons. So major disruption to the German military effort.
But his story didn't end with the World War II. Since he traveled, when the war ended, he traveled through Europe and eventually ended up in London, in Britain.
He is probably the last cursed soldier, a Polish cursed soldier living in the United Kingdom. By that, I mean he fought after the war ended. For many months, until 1946, he was in the woods, still fighting for Poland, still hoping that he would be freed. But the Soviet punishments were so severe, and they were really focused on catching and eliminating and torturing those partisan units. He decided to move to the West, and he and his unit dressed up in Soviet uniforms. That's how he managed to sneak out of the country.
To Berlin, and then later on further to West, and eventually to London. But what's remarkable is the fact that he didn't stop fighting even in London, because he joined another group, and those are soldiers who were specially trained in order to be sent back to Poland.
Yes, the Freedom and Independence Wien unit was especially trained to be ready for a potential World War III or some other actions against the Soviets to free Poland, essentially. So he was trained, he was sent to Western Germany, were under American command. They were being trained together with the silent and unseen, cichociemni. So he was very much ready. And that was one of the reasons why he never set up a family, which is enormously sad, because the genetics of Sergiusz Papliński should really live as long as possible. But he was always ready for the Third World War, and he said he would not set up a family because he would not want to die and then leave them alone, which is quite touching and quite scary to think that that was his reason, because he loved Poland so much.
But eventually he didn't jump with a parachute in Poland, which he was trained to do, as I understand. Since it would be a very difficult task, he would end up in Poland fighting against the Soviets. This mission didn't happen eventually, so he stayed in London. And there was a question of many Poles in those times, I would say even of generals, like what to do after the war when we know how to fight. We are equipped and very well-skilled soldiers, but people who didn't speak English, for example. And many of them ended up as bartenders or waitresses. But Sergiusz joined eventually the Academy of Fine Arts.
Yes, he really took on many jobs. He even worked in mines because he was an expert in explosives, and you would really, have somebody like that with such an experience to work in a mine. That was a brief period. He really took on many jobs, and he became an artist. He joined the school. There was a special fund by Tadeusz Komorowski, so they gave him the money for the art school.
And here we will wrap up this episode and tell a little bit more about artistic path of Sergiusz Papliński in the next episode. Just look up at him. His nickname is Kafka. The story of Sergiusz is really, really remarkable. And thank you very much for watching Poland Daily Culture.